Good evening. Glad to be here with you on this Tuesday night, March the 3rd, 2026. And, it was a beautiful day out to walk. It couldn't have been much better. Maybe if it was a couple degrees cooler, but can't complain. Today is the last day in session A, which is the first half of the spring semester through ASU. ASU is on the quarter system, if you will, where every class is 7.5 weeks. And so instead of taking 4 concurrent classes, you take 2 at a time, 7.5 weeks each. But you're still taking 4 classes a semester. It kind of seems, I guess in some sense, what they have found is that there are certain demographics of people that work better with classes that are 8 weeks or less. And so they are, a lot of the universities and junior colleges are switching over to that kind of structure, even though there are still plenty of other people like myself that would much rather take classes over a period of 16 weeks. To me, I guess it really doesn't make any difference whether you take classes 2 at a time that are twice as long in half the time, or yeah, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. I mean, it's still the same amount of hours. It just, a lot of times it does seem like these 7.5 or 8 week classes are just not enough to learn things as well, especially when it comes to STEM classes, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think in a lot of ways are much better learned over longer periods of time versus having to cram everything in, having to do a lot of memorization. I mean, that's just the whole memorization thing to me drives me nuts. I came across this thought uh, earlier today on my walk as I was listening to a lecture, and it says, where is it? Education needs to move from a world of asking what in its testing to asking why. In other words, we need to stop asking people to memorize facts and ask why instead. Like the difference between anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the what, the physiology is the why. I mean, both of those two are important. It would be hard to answer the why question if you didn't first have the what question answered. Like, what is it we're looking at? Okay, now why does it function the way that it does, and what purpose does it serve? But anyway, enough of that. I know I kind of have been spending a lot of time ruminating on vitamin C lately. And the reason why is because at 53 years of age, you start getting to a point where your skin just does not look as much like what you might like it to. And I really, really, really want to solve this problem. I mean, I get the fact I'm going to age. I am going to continue stacking up year after year, day after day. I can't change that. But the reality is, if there's something that we can do to make all of our soft tissue, our skin, our joints, our connective tissue, our bones more remain as flexible and as young and as supple as somebody 25 years old or less, all the way up to 120 years of age. We're going to have a lot more comfortable time collecting all of these years. And that's really my goal. And I'm trying to find the best answers for that. Uh, Obviously, sleep, the right kind of sleep, the right time of day sleep, the right electrolytes, the right kind of hydration, uh, and even this most recent kick that I'm on, the whole vitamin C. Like, what role is it that vitamin C plays in the synthesis of collagen? And then asking the question about what would one expect to see in someone at 53 years of age if they lived a life that was completely sufficient in serum levels of vitamin C, never having any deficiency, versus someone who had serum levels that were not far above what it takes just to keep somebody from getting scurvy, full-blown scurvy. And what it really boils down to is there's going to be people that are all across the spectrum, from absolute ease to a complete evidence of full-blown dis-ease, which in this case is scurvy. And I know here in the United States, in the Western world, we really do have a hard time finding anybody that ever dies from lack of vitamin C or that has full-blown scurvy. However, I am beginning to suspect, because of my learning, that there are a lot of people out there that have been living a life that it does not fully support the amount of vitamin C that their body needs. Not in excess, not by any means in excess, but just enough to maintain the adequate, fully saturated version of what we call vitamin C in the bodily fluids at all times. And I imagine the best way to understand that is if you were to be somebody that was eating roughly three oranges a day, every day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one in the evening before bed. If you're somebody that is worried about your teeth and the citric acid, that is fully understandable. And if that's the case, just make sure, if you're going to have an orange, that you follow it with a little bit of water and rinse it down. Make sure you rinse out your mouth really well. Then you can just swallow it. But I did ask ChatGPT today to help me by going out and looking through the scientific literature on this. And again, the best information I can find is roughly, basically, you've got to be eating about 90 to 100 oranges per month. And frankly, I don't know anybody that's doing that. And I'm not the biggest fan of taking supplements, as those who are going to ever be watching these videos is aware. I keep talking about it. I keep saying it. However, there is one form of supplemental vitamin C that I will take, and that is a fat-soluble version called ascorbate palmitate. and I take that at night before I go to bed with a glass of milk, because you have to take it with fat if you want to absorb it properly. And I take it at that time because I want to support my body when it's sleeping, when it's doing the most amount of repair and upkeep. And surprisingly, I've been sleeping better, and um, I'm only a few weeks into it, maybe a month of getting back onto having or trying to get to a solid plasma level of vitamin C. And I am feeling better for sure. I'm sleeping better. I know this because I have less sleep disturbances. And so, I put together a whole thread of discussion on this. And then I asked GPT to basically wrap up everything into an essay. And I'm going to post it with this video, but I also want to just read it to you. It says scurvy is often described as a discrete disease, but biologically it is better understood as the extreme end of a spectrum of vitamin C insufficiency. Humans cannot synthesize vitamin C, so our tissues rely entirely on dietary intake to maintain adequate plasma and intracellular concentrations. When levels fall severely, the classic symptoms of scurvy appear: bleeding gums, fragile capillaries, bruising, poor wound healing, and connective tissue breakdown. These symptoms arise because vitamin C is required for the hydroxylation of proline and lysine during collagen synthesis. Without adequate ascorbate, vitamin C, collagen fibers are formed but are structurally weaker and less stable. Not good. Importantly, the transition from optimal status to scurvy is not abrupt. Clinical and epidemiological research commonly identifies a category called hypovitaminosis C, typically defined as plasma concentrations below about 23 millimoles per liter, while levels of around 50 millimoles per liter are generally considered adequate for maintaining the body's vitamin C pool. Plasma concentrations near 70 millimoles per liter represents a plateau region in which tissues are largely saturated and excess vitamin C begins to be excreted in the urine. These thresholds suggest that vitamin C status exists on a continuum rather than a binary state of deficiency or sufficiency. This continuum has important implications for how we think about long-term tissue health. Skin and connective tissues contain high concentrations of vitamin C because they are constantly remodeling collagen. If collagen synthesis repeatedly occurs under conditions of marginal vitamin C availability, the newly formed connective tissue may be subtly weaker or slower to repair micro damages. Over decades, this could plausibly contribute to earlier and more pronounced connective tissue aging, including reduced dermal plasticity, increasing capillary fragility, and slower wound healing. Observational studies support aspects of this idea. For example, population analyses have found that higher vitamin C intake is associated with fewer signs of skin aging, such as wrinkling and dryness, while deficiency is known to impair wound healing and connective tissue repair. However, the available evidence also highlights an important limitation. Much of the research linking vitamin C status to long term aging outcomes is observational, meaning that vitamin C intake often correlates with broader lifestyle factors such as overall diet quality, smoking status, body weight, and socioeconomic conditions. Because of this, it remains difficult to isolate the independent causal effort of lifelong vitamin C status on connective tissue aging. Nevertheless, the biological mechanisms are well established. Vitamin C supports collagen formation, functions as an antioxidant, and helps maintain structural integrity in skin, blood vessels, and other connective tissues. From this perspective, scurvy represents the catastrophic failure that occurs when vitamin C levels fall too low for too long. More subtle deficiencies may not produce dramatic symptoms, but they could still represent a chronic constraint on the body's ability to repair and maintain structural tissues. Viewed this way, vitamin C sufficiency is less about simply avoiding scurvy and more about maintaining the biochemical conditions necessary for long term tissue maintenance. Ensuring that plasma vitamin C levels remain within an adequate or near saturated range may therefore support ongoing repair processes that preserve connective tissue integrity across the lifespan. So, in other words, kiddies, make sure you eat plenty of oranges, or um, if you want, you can, if you have a nectarine tree out in your backyard, God, if you had one of those, you'd be so lucky. Get yourself a nice juicer and make all the fresh juice you can every day. If that is not a convenience you can afford, you can always go to places like Costco and they sell nectarine juice, orange juice that is not from concentrate, so it does contain a lot more of the original constituent components of the oranges, the fiber that's in the orange juice or the nectarine juice. And the stuff just tastes amazing. It feels good, it tastes good, and it contains, relatively significant amounts of vitamin C. And then, like I said, I take right now, currently, the single dose of ascorbate palmitate, and uh, I may increase that a little bit. It depends. From what I have found so far in the literature, is that it does take about uh, if someone was hoping to have a full recovery of their soft tissues, and I'm not talking just about skin on the outside, but all of our soft tissues inside and out, the that would take about probably 3 to 4 months. But the reality is time is going to pass anyways. So my suggestion is just get on it as soon as you can. The other benefit of oranges and or orange or nectarine juice is they contain a lot of potassium, which we all need more of. And I can guarantee you most human beings are not getting a sufficient amount of vitamin C in their dietary intake. So, by all means, step up. Don't be afraid. For myself, I also consume 3 servings of whole milk every day, which also contains a significant amount of potassium. And do I get enough still? No. But I do like to get as close as I can to sufficient. I also need to make sure I keep drinking more coconut water, although I'm not the biggest fan of the way it tastes. But, anyways, I'm not going to keep you guys for too long tonight. I say you guys. I don't even think there's anybody watching these videos yet. However, someday somebody will. Um, Just some more of my thoughts from today's lectures that I listened to on YouTube while I was out walking around. And that has to do with large language models and what we call AI. Is that large language models might have the power of computation, but they lack the judgment that humans have. They don't have the ability to make a judgment call. And that's the benefit we still have. So, what are we to do? Well, today's AI is like the introduction of spreadsheets and the power of spreadsheets, and um, what's it called again? Excel, the Excel spreadsheets, and the power that they have. Now, interestingly, accountants have not gone away just because of spreadsheets, because spreadsheets in and of themselves don't they don't do anything. They're a tool. They're like this Texas Instruments graphing calculator I have. It doesn't do anything if I don't open it up and make sure the battery's still charged and push the buttons. But when I do, it sure as heck does make it a whole lot easier than using a slide rule and paper and pencil and all that good stuff. Uh, I'm trying to think here what to use an LLM and apply a layer of judgment on top of that. That would be a superpower. So, to utilize ChatGPT or these large language models as a way to quickly compute large volumes of data and then have us be the judgment that sits on top of that data to determine whether or not uh, that information is good and useful, that's where the money's going to be. Uh, so, anyways, enough on that. We are living in a future of experiential output. And that's one of the things that this YouTube lecture, it was Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, I think was the program I was listening to. And, it does seem like the Gen Z people, like my younger daughter's age, in their early 20s, they're focusing again back on the idea of experiences, which is actually pretty darn cool because, our whole life back when I was a teenager or getting close to 20 years old was a lot more experiential. We didn't have smartphones, so we didn't get hooked to them per se. And that's kind of exciting for me as a parent to see my kids going out and wanting to experience things more. And it's kind of weird in a way because, we may even be coming up to a time where they stop using smartphones like we know of them and go back to phones with buttons because they want to experience it, which is, totally cool with me. And, AI will never grow beyond what it is now until it starts having experiences by which it can draw judgment based results that would affect its future output. Meaning it has to be able to experience, if that's even possible, experience the consequences, I guess you'd say, of what it is doing. Now, will it ever be able to do that? That's still hard to say. One other thing I was thinking about today is when you ask a question to ChatGPT, I think a lot of times we have a tendency to load some of our presuppositions or dispositions into the questions we ask. And as a claptrap, they will respond, unless we are just completely off the range, they will respond in a way that kind of feeds our own ego. And so at that point, what you should do is ask, why did you respond the way that you did? And it'll tell you straight up, well, because it's the way you framed the question, which frankly you might go back and say, okay, is there a better, more balanced way to reframe the question? And if so, then what would your output be? And that's what I mean by having a better understanding of how to actually use ChatGPT, because then I imagine you'd get an answer that was somewhat more balanced instead of nuanced into your favor or favored idealistic world and life view. Also, another thing that I picked up on that I thought was an interesting suggestion from one of the guests on the video I was listening to is that you should always be skeptical of somebody that names their ideal or movement something really positive. The question is, why are they having to name it something really positive? Is it because it actually lacks positivity and they're using words to kind of grease the wheels in our head to think that it's something positive when it may not be? That is one thought. But, ultimately, when it comes to, back to just kind of what I've been touching on as well recently with the idea of AI and where we're headed in the future with it, there are going to be jobs that go away. There are going to be jobs that are created. Um, like the idea of a knocker upper. Has anybody ever heard of a knocker upper? Back before there were such things as alarm clocks, there were people that got paid to wake up really early in the morning and go along and go house to house to people that were paying them to knock on the door until they came and answered to make sure that they were awake in the morning. Or some people would use like these long tubes and they would spit little balls up at the bedroom windows so that it would wake the people up. And there were some people that were hard to rouse, and so those people would pay extra to have somebody sit there and knock on that front door until they got up to ensure that they were up, which is kind of wild. And so there is that. I want to kind of wrap things up here with another thought. I guess you could say a question is, what do I need to do to earn my own respect? Take that one, ask that one of yourself, come back. Feel free to leave a note here in my discussion section that's below this video and let me know what you think. What do you need to do to earn your own respect? Then also this last thought that came from this discussion that was on impact theory is the guy was suggesting that ADHD is not something that is a pathology that needs to be medicated away. It's not a medical disorder. That it's that some people, like me, are high functioning, that it is a very good skill to have, in that for people that have what we call ADHD, they're very good at task context switching. And those people get very bored very quickly and easily because they realize that much of what we're doing should not be a human task any longer, but one that should have been automated away a long time ago. And I totally get that, because I was the kid that during math tests, when we weren't allowed to use calculators, I would look up the clock on the classroom wall, and I would use the clock as a calculator. And I mean, teachers can't stop you from looking at a clock. And so I would very easily be able to answer the questions using the clock as my calculator. I guess you could say a base 12 number system. And I would get the right answer, but I didn't do the work the way they wanted to see it done. And so I would fail the test. I'm like, well, I got the right answers, didn't I? And they're like, yeah, you have all the right answers, but you didn't show your work. I'm like, well, why? Why do I have to show my work if I can get the right answers up here? It's because they just want to see that you can do the work. And as I get older, I kind of understand that now, in that there's always a good chance that you're going to come up with a number that is a little bit too large for you to put in your old gray noggin bucket up here. But if you have the ability to do the work, you can plug the number in and you can chug along, get the right answer, and move along. Plug and chug, baby. Plug and chug. Anyways, I'm going to check out for the evening. Make sure you're eating enough oranges. Make sure you're getting enough orange juice if need be. If you're somebody that has issues with blood glucose levels and insulin, check with your doctor first, or just, find the best way possible for you to get vitamin C in whatever way you need to get it. Get it. Or I'm going to keep sitting here every day and talking about it. Either way, I want wonders in my own body, and I'm going to be making sure I get adequate levels of vitamin C for it from here on out. But I can't wait for 3 months, 4 months to pass and see just what difference there is in the appearance of my skin. Already, as is, I know I don't have a lot of wrinkles that a lot of people my age do. So I'm very fortunate in that way. But there are parts of my skin, like the back of my hands and my forearms, that are classically looking older, like most people do as they start to get older. And I don't want to go there. I just don't. But we shall see what happens. In the meantime, Michael Loomis here, checking out for the evening with you here on Chew Digest, the channel on YouTube. You can also find .com. That link is posted with every video. You can also find me on Facebook. If you really want to look for me and you want to chat with me, you can find me there. And I will put a link to that Facebook page as well. You can send me a message. You can also add me or like me or whatever it is you do on Facebook. I don't know. Anyways, have a good night. I'm going to go get myself a bowl of popcorn, and enjoy me some television.